Imagine waking up one morning and a huge piece of the internet is just gone. Well, on November 18th, 2025, that wasn't a hypothetical. That's exactly what happened. Major sites, apps we use every day, poof, all dark. So, what on earth broke the internet? Let's dive in and break down what happened, why it matters, and what this whole thing tells us about the, well, kind of fragile foundation of our digital world.
Yeah, it's a question you hope you never have to actually answer, right? But on that Tuesday morning, it wasn't just one or two websites having a bad day. It was a massive domino effect, this cascade of outages that just rippled through almost every single corner of our digital lives. So, what did it actually look like on the ground? For millions of us, the day kicked off with that all too familiar, frustrating feeling. You know the one. Your favorite app just spins. That important website you need for work? Error message. Your group chats? Totally silent. But the weird part was, this wasn't just your problem, it was happening to pretty much everyone, everywhere, all at once. And look, we're not talking about some small niche sites here. This was the A-list. X, Facebook, ChatGPT, Spotify, League of Legends, even the app for the New Jersey transit system. And the ultimate irony? Down Detector itself went down. I mean, the one place you go to check if everything else is broken was broken. You just can't make this stuff up. So you might be thinking, was this some kind of massive, coordinated cyber attack? Nope. The real reason is actually simpler and, in a way, a lot scarier. The failure pointed to a single, critical weak point in the internet's backbone, a company most people have never even heard of, but one that almost all of us rely on every single day. And that company is Cloudflare. They provide the invisible infrastructure that basically powers the modern web. Things like security from attacks and making sure websites load super fast. To put it simply, they make your favorite sites speedy, safe, and reliable. And here's the kicker. A staggering portion of the entire internet runs through their systems. Honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is this. Think of Cloudflare as the air traffic control for the entire internet. And when air traffic control goes down, well, it doesn't matter how fancy the planes are. Nothing's taking off and nothing's landing. The entire digital airport just grinds to a complete halt.
Okay, so how does the internet's air traffic control just fall out of the sky? It wasn't a slow decline, it happened fast. Super fast, actually, over a couple of really critical hours. So let's walk through the timeline of exactly how it all went down. All right, so it all kicks off around 11 a.m. UTC. You know, a few little blips on the radar, but the real chaos starts just 20 minutes later. That's when Cloudflare's network gets absolutely slammed by what they called unusual traffic spikes. And boom, that's when all those internal server error messages started popping up everywhere. And get this, for almost 2 hours, which is basically a lifetime in internet years, we were all in the dark before Cloudflare even said, okay, we think we found it. So the trigger was this massive, sudden flood of traffic that just completely swamped their systems. But here's the really unnerving part. Even Cloudflare didn't know what was causing it right away. Was it a coordinated attack? Some kind of weird bug feeding on itself? For a while, it was a total mystery. It was like a ghost in the machine that took down a massive slice of the web. Okay, so that's the tech side of it. But the real-world impact? That was a whole different story. This wasn't just some minor inconvenience. This was like a digital earthquake. And the aftershocks were felt absolutely everywhere. I mean, just look at this number. At its peak, you had over 11,000 complaints hitting Down Detector right before it buckled under the pressure itself. And you gotta remember, that number is just the tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg. It's just a small sample of the millions of people around the world just staring at broken screens. And the sheer scope of this thing, it's just mind-boggling. It wasn't just one category of service. It hit everything. Communication tools, the AI we use for work, our entertainment, even essential public services. All of them went dark. And it was all because they were all leaning on this one single point of failure. It was a brutal wake-up call for how fragile this whole system really is. So once Cloudflare figured out what was wrong, you'd think, okay, just flip the switch and turn it all back on, right? Well, not so fast. Getting a system this huge and complex back online is a super delicate operation. Yeah, getting the internet's backbone back up and running is definitely not a simple on-off switch. First, they had to pinpoint the problem. Then, they started to roll out the fix. But to even do that, they had to take some pretty extreme steps, like temporarily cutting off some services in the UK just to ease the pressure. The key word through all of this was gradual. This was like performing open-heart surgery on a patient that's still running a marathon.
And if you were trying to get online during all this, it was just so frustrating. A site like X might pop back up for a second, you get your hopes up, and then poof, it's gone again. That flickering on again, off again experience, that's the classic sign of engineers walking a tightrope, trying to rebalance a massive, teetering system without letting it crash all over again. All right, so the dust has settled, the internet is back. What did we actually learn from all this? Because this was way more than just a bad day online. This was basically a live stress test of the very foundation the internet is built on. And this quote from Graham Stewart over at Checkpoint really just nails it. He points out that this isn't a one-off Cloudflare problem. It fits the exact same pattern we've seen with other huge outages at places like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. The giants that hold up our digital world, they're starting to show the strain. And that right there is the core of the issue. See, in our quest to make the internet faster and more efficient, we've kind of put all our eggs in a few giant baskets. We've handed over immense power to just a handful of these massive companies. The upside is speed and convenience. The downside? Well, we just saw it. When one of those giants stumbles, it takes a massive chunk of the internet down with it. Which leaves us with a really big and, frankly, pretty scary question. We've built our modern world on the shoulders of these giants. We just saw what happens when one of them trips. As we get more and more dependent on them every single day, you have to ask, what happens when the next one falls? Because this whole ordeal proved it's no longer a question of if it will happen again. It's just a question of when.